The best Cowboy tweets from practice always come from Jon Machota, who is joining us from The Athletic here on DFW Sports Station 105.3 The Fan. John, what is the Texas Coast offense?
That's a good question. I like the name. I just think that it's going to be a variation of obviously a lot of West Coast principles. I mean, my whole thing is that obviously that's the thing when we go out there and you leave and people want to know, okay, what are you seeing difference with this offense? And at the end of the day, like the offense is going to be made to be however it best fits Dak Prescott. It's all about him being most successful. And so I don't believe that Kellen Moore was just out here running his own offense like, no, Dak, you'll adapt to me. I'm a first-time offensive coordinator. He was doing things that he felt were best fit for Dak Prescott too. And so, yeah, there'll be some changes. I think that he will get the ball out quicker, maybe some less reads. And then obviously you're adding Brandon Cooks, so it adds a speed element to it that we actually got to see for the first time on display yesterday. But in terms of just like this being a completely different offense, I just don't see that. As long as Dak Prescott's your quarterback, they're going to do whatever fits Dak the best.
John, do you think this is a case of, for all the talk that they've had this offseason about the offense being different and doing this and that, is there a chance that really all they're saying is they're going to have new run game install? Because it feels like a lot of what they're saying is semantics when it comes to the passing game. It feels like the passing game is going to be presented at least pretty similarly to what it's been the last few years.
Yeah, I agree with that. And then the running game will have to have some changes because you're taking away a piece in Ezekiel Elliott that, although his production was dropping down, he was still so productive throughout his career, and so much was built around him. And so you have these new running backs, so that's going to have to change. You don't have Dalton Schultz anymore, so things with the tight ends are going to have to change. You add Brandon Cooks into the offense, so there'll be changes because of that. And I just think Mike McCarthy will ultimately call the game in a different way. And because of all of those things, I think one of the biggest positives that will come from this is that your opponents, particularly the ones in the NFC East, are not going to have the same tendencies on you. They're just going to do things in a different way. And really, if you tell me that this offensive line can stay somewhat healthy and it's not musical chairs every other week, I think the run game will figure itself out and it'll be productive and it'll be fine. But I don't really care who's back there. If it's every week we don't know who's going to be at right tackle, who's going to be at left tackle, who's working at left guard, like it's been for a big chunk of McCarthy's time as head coach, then there's going to be problems in the running game.
Yeah, John, because it's like, if you listen to Mike talk all off season, you would think that they were like second or first in pass attempts in like the beginning of games, but they were like 16th. Like, does he have he wants to run it that much more, or is this just kind of spin?
Yeah, see, I think that all goes back to when we were in Indianapolis and we were having lunch with him, and he mentioned the quote that everybody still talks about now. It's the, Kellen wanted to light up the scoreboard quote. And the way I took that was he didn't mean necessarily that he wants to, okay, we're changing the identity of the offense. We're going to be this run-first team, and that's all we're going to do is if we're going to have, kind of like in 2014, you could tell Garrett really wanted to implement the run with DeMarco Murray, and Tony kind of had to take a little bit of a step back. And in 2016, the run was a huge part, too, obviously, with Zeke in his rookie year. But I don't get the sense that that's what Mike necessarily meant. I think he was more talking along the lines of the Green Bay game and the Jacksonville game, where you have those leads, and maybe you got away from, controlling the offense a little bit more, running more clock, and getting out of those games, with wins and not, come from behind losses. And so I thought he meant more of that, because I just don't see how you're going to necessarily run the ball more than you have in the past.
Is Dak Prescott happy with this new relationship and setup?
I mean, he's obviously Dak's. I mean, he's a PR dream, so he always says the right things.
Yep.
But there has to be, I sense there has to be some type of being a little bit uncomfortable in just the sense that, he just knew Kellen from being a teammate with his. It was a similar offense throughout his entire time as quarterback, from coming from Garrett to Linehan and then to, Kellen Moore. So there has to be some changes, whether it not necessarily just even on the field, but just, maybe with the way plays are being called and things like that. And so he probably is going to have to work harder over this next month before training camp starts to get fully on the page where he's completely comfortable with every single thing that, McCarthy wants to implement. And then there's, like he has said, there's going to be things that he just doesn't really feel that great about, and they're going to throw that stuff out. And so I kind of get the sense that because you're not going to see a lot of Dak in the preseason, that these first couple games during the regular season, there could be some bumps in the road. Fortunately for the Cowboys, their defense should be one of the best in the league, and that you keep them in the games until that gets kind of ironed out. But I wouldn't be surprised to see, a few little rough patches early in the year.
Talking with Jon Machota from The Athletic, king of these Cowboys Twitter streets. So John is well aware, Shan, that my bit at practice is I am the Cowboys conspiracy theorist. So I will always try to find this person's not here. Are they holding out? Are they injured? Whatever else. Okay, so I've got my latest conspiracy theory, John. Yesterday, McCarthy and Dak both talked a lot, more so than these first couple weeks when we've gotten a chance to talk to them, talked a lot about Dak ultimately being in control of the offense and having ownership of it and having a lot of leeway to do what he wants. I think, building on what Shan just asked, I think Dak was a little frustrated with some of the moves that were made this offseason with the coaching staff, particularly Doug Nussmeier. What do you think about my conspiracy theory that reiterating to him the power that he has to control the offense is a sort of olive branch from McCarthy to, hey, not much is going to change here?
I thought you were going to go in another direction. I was waiting for you to say something like you think that he's saying that now so that when things go wrong on the offense, you can be like, hey, this is Dak's offense. I really thought that's where you're going with that. No. You are great with these conspiracy theories. I don't know if I.
What's his hit rate, John? What's his hit rate on these?
2%.
I don't know, probably 33%.
Okay, that's not bad.
That's not bad. I'll deal with that.
I don't know if I necessarily look at it that way. I just because to me that's how Mike McCarthy has really always talked about the quarterback position since he took over as head coach. He just didn't have as much say in the offense because Kellen Moore was still here. So. I think that, he's probably trying to reiterate that a little bit more to just cement that, hey, I'm not trying to come in here and say, hey, this is what I did with Brett Favre, this is what I did with Aaron Rodgers, and this is now what you're going to do. You're going to adapt to what we had been doing. I think he wants to make it clear that, hey, at the end of the day, this is your thing, man. Everybody follows you. You're the leader on this team. You've been here a long time. Ultimately, we're not going to have success if you don't have success. I kind of thought that was the message he was trying to get across.
Guess the offensive line left to right for the opener in New York.
I'm going to go Terrence Steele at right tackle. I'm going to
right
go
to left.
Oh, you said left to right.
Whatever. Left to right on your radio dial.
I'll go Tyron Smith at left tackle, Tyler Smith at left guard, Biadasz at center, Zach Martin, and then Terrence Steele.
Okay, so Tyron at left tackle.
And week 3 when Tyron is hurt and out for the year.
Oh, okay, yeah. So what it'll be for the majority of the season.
Go center to right. Go middle to left.
Center right to left.
I would say Tyler Smith. If that happens, then I think Tyler Smith, goes naturally back to the left tackle. Or if, let's say, Terrence Steele has a setback or he just isn't, where he needs to be, then that's where I can see Tyron, being your right tackle. I just have not bought into this Terrence Steele at left guard. Maybe it happens, whatever, but I just don't believe that is the best thing for this offensive line. I think the best thing for this offensive line is to have 3 starting caliber offensive tackles because you're going to need at least 2 of them and a swing tackle every single game, and just let someone figure out the other backup left guard spot or who could end up being your starting left guard if Tyler's at left tackle, and that being if it's Chuma Adoga, if it's Matt Farniak, if it's Josh Ball, if it's somebody that's not even on the roster right now, if it's a veteran that they have to sign during the season, I just think it would be easier to figure that out than to find another good quality offensive tackle.
So that's the way you think it will be. Is that also who you think would be the best 5, or would you change it up personally?
No, I think that's the best 5. I think that's why they'll ultimately go with that. I mean, I feel like that would be the no-brainer if everybody could just stay healthy. I mean, that is your best 5 offensive linemen, and I don't even really think there's much debate to it. It's just the fact of, best 5 sounds great, and then you look at Mike McCarthy's time as head coach, and they almost never have the best 5. I mean, last year they never did because they didn't have Tyron to start the season, and when Tyron came back, they didn't have Terrence Steele. So, I mean, I really think if you told me that offensive line stayed healthy, as much as Mike McCarthy reiterates it, I'm sure you guys have heard him say it, like, that will be a big factor in their success. If you just can tell me right there that the offensive line stays healthy, and it's the healthiest it's been since Mike McCarthy has been their head coach, then this team will be right where it needs to be and, have a chance to make a deep playoff run.
Cowboys insider from The Athletic, Jon Machota, here on Shan and RJ, 105.3 The Fan. I know it's tough because it's, the pace and the pads and OTAs and minicamps, but has anyone jumped out to you here over these past couple of weeks? Bobby was talking about Brandon Cook's speed yesterday. Anyone else in your athletic notes that has jumped out from practice?
I would absolutely agree with Cooks, and that's just because you can actually see the speed on display, whereas you go into these practices and you really want to be able to come out with some type of a interesting nugget about Mozzie Smith. He's the first round pick. He should have a big role on this team. And when you don't have pads on, and really for most of this, not even having helmets on, it's difficult for me to sit there and tweet out and write stories about how he just looks really good and all this. I can't do it. It's not the type of reporter I am. I won't do that. And I just don't think you're going to have a lot from Mozzie Smith until you actually see the pads on, but the Cook speed absolutely stands out. And then I would even say Stephon Gilmore too. He doesn't look like he's old. That's the thing. A lot of people will say, hey, he's been with so many teams, been in the league for a while. He looks like he is just a savvy veteran that, again, they're not making plays on the ball. They're not trying to get guys injured or anything like that, but he just always seems like he's in the right spot. And it's just like his demeanor and everything that, man, I think those two, going back to those two trades that they made, that could be the difference in January, just because of the fact of if both of those guys stay healthy, the playoff experience they have, that if you just look back on what they could potentially bring now, at that time of the year, because ultimately to me, that's the biggest thing I struggle with in covering this team is really no matter what happens during the regular season, this season's ultimately going to be decided and we're going to judge it by what happens in January. And I just think those two guys could come up big if they're able to stay healthy.
John, Dak Prescott, Terrence Steele, CeeDee Lamb, Trayvon Diggs. Of those four, which ones have new contracts when they take the field in week one?
I would say I think the most likely is CeeDee Lamb. I don't think they want to mess around with any issues with CeeDee Lamb. And I think that between now and maybe the start of the season, I could see them getting something done there. Trayvon Diggs, I just feel like I could just see him playing this season and then next season under, as a franchise tag guy if they can't get something worked out. And when you do that, there's a potential that you could lose him. And I obviously don't want that to happen. But I really don't think they want to mess around with CeeDee Lamb. I think that they're pretty confident they can get something, that they'll get something done with Dak and Micah eventually. Terrence Steele is, if he's healthy and he's playing well and you don't get anything done, he could price himself out of your range. So that's the potential. I think CeeDee Lamb is number one on that list.
John, thank you so much for the time as always. We appreciate it, and keep track of Bobby's latest conspiracy theory.
Yeah, he always keeps me on my toes. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, guys.
I've got a wild one for you when I see today about Kelvin Joseph. Just wait.
Oh, boy.
What, that he's going to play? That he's going to actually play?
Yeah, that's the most wild conspiracy theory there is.
Thank you, John. Jon Machota from The Athletic on your home of America's team.